Why St. Bernadette's warnings are astoundingly relevant in 2026. In 1909, a coffin buried for 30 years in damp earth was opened, sending chills down the spines of the scientific community. A body never embalmed remained soft and intact, as if time itself had frozen the process of decay at the tomb's threshold. But the true terror lay not in the incorruptible flesh. This eerie miracle was merely the seal of authenticity for 5 fierce warnings from an illiterate girl, bloody truths that the modern world is frantically trying to conceal. This is not just a strange phenomenon, it is a path to salvation for those brave enough to face the future. Let us begin at the end of this girl's life to witness the irony and the majesty of God's hand. In 1909, the Catholic Church exhumed the body of Sister Bernadette Subarus to begin the process of canonization. 30 years had passed since she took her final breath, ravaged by brutal bone tuberculosis. Forensic doctors arrived prepared to collect a skeleton. Instead, when the lid creaked open, they recoiled in utter shock. Her skin was intact, her joints remained supple, and there was no odor of death or rigidity. This biological impossibility repeated itself in 2 subsequent exhumations in 1919 and 1925. To this day, her body rests in a glass reliquary at the convent of Nevers, a silent slap to the face of the universe's laws of decay. To understand the power of the events at the Grotto of Lourdes, we must go back to 1858. France was a boiling pot of intellectual arrogance and crumbling faith. The elites were intoxicated by the Enlightenment, preaching Auguste Comte's positivism, claiming religion was a primitive stage of humanity and that science would soon replace God. Amidst this night of arrogant reason, God chose to speak, but he did not choose the splendor of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome or the learned theologians of Paris. The Subarus family lived in Lourdes, a tiny town. The father was unemployed and the mother washed clothes for pennies. 6 people were crammed into Le Cachot, a former abandoned prison cell, a damp, foul 16-square-meter room. Bernadette was the personification of misery, premature, nearly killed by cholera at age 12, and suffering from chronic asthma that made every breath a battle. At 14, she was so stunted she looked like a 10-year-old. She was illiterate, unable even to spell her own name. Why did the Queen of Heaven choose a starving, illiterate child living in a literal dungeon? The answer began to unfold on a freezing morning, February 11th, 1858. While gathering scrapwood at the Massabielle Grotto, a place so filthy locals used it as a pig shelter, Bernadette experienced the supernatural. Suddenly, a roar like a gale wind ripped through the air, yet the trees remained deathly still. In a crevice of the rock, a brilliant light appeared. Within that light stood a young lady of incomparable beauty, about 16 or 17 years old, dressed in white with a blue sash and golden roses on her feet. When the lady smiled, Bernadette described it as a smile beyond space and time, one that either overwhelms you unto death or transforms your reality forever. The message and the resistance. Over the following weeks, the lady spoke not in the refined French of the elites, but in Occitan, a crude local dialect. Her first words were a request. Would you have the goodness to come here for 15 days? The Queen of the Universe used formal address to speak to a beggar child. She then shattered all illusions of prosperity religion by stating, I do not promise to make you happy in this world, but in the other. As thousands flocked to the grotto, the French authorities panicked. Police interrogators tried to break the 14-year-old's will, but she remained as solid as a rock. I am charged with telling you, not with making you believe, she told them. Even the local priest, Abbé Péramele, was skeptical until the lady revealed her name. On February 25th, the lady gave a strange command. Go drink at the spring and wash yourself there. Seeing no water, Bernadette knelt and began digging in the dirt, eating mud and smearing it on her face. The crowd mocked her, thinking she was mad. But from that mud, a spring began to flow, a spring that now yields 6 million liters of water annually, responsible for countless medically documented miracles. The final bomb dropped when the lady identified herself. I am the Immaculate Conception. This illiterate child had correctly pronounced a complex theological dogma that the Pope had only declared 4 years prior. The incorrupt flesh of Bernadette serves as a seal for 5 warnings to our modern age. Repentance. The 21st century hates the word sin. We prefer healing, self-acceptance, or trauma. But Lourdes demands a courageous admission. We are wrong, We have offended the Creator and we must turn back. Pray for sinners. The lady didn't focus on material poverty or physical illness, but on the tragedy of eternal loss. In an era where hell is silenced to keep people comfortable, this message is a jarring alarm. Ontological humility. Whether in the 19th century or the AI era of 2026, humans believe they can build heaven on earth through technology. The Immaculate Conception reminds us that our nature is broken and requires intervention from above. The spring is not for me. Bernadette found a spring that healed thousands but refused to use it for her own agonizing bone cancer. She rejected transactional religion. She loved God for who He is, not for what He could give. Broom behind the door. In our age of digital narcissism and likes, Bernadette considered herself a broom, used to sweep, then put away in the dark. True holiness lies in faithfulness and anonymity. Conclusion. The history of Lourdes continues. Millions visit, and the spring still flows, but the truth remains hard to swallow. We want the miracles, but we refuse to eat the mud. We want the healing, but we flee from the cross. Bernadette understood this truth from the age of 14 in the mud until her death at 35 on her sickbed. And the question for us in 2026 remains, are we willing to accept the good news on God's grueling terms, obedience, renunciation, and the cross? Or will we keep searching for a diluted, comfortable religion that only serves our ego?